Honestly, she's a liability now, but we have to act like the devoted family. My husband Julian kept his voice low. The kitchen door was cracked open just enough. I sat perfectly still in my wheelchair in the unlit hallway. We were hosting Thanksgiving dinner for 22 people. My mother-in-law Dorothy stood next to him at the counter, arranging cranberry sauce in a crystal bowl. She did not correct him. She simply nodded and whispered that it was a tragedy he was stuck with half a woman. "Poor Natalie," she murmured. I did not gasp. I did not wheel myself in there demanding an apology. I silently reversed my chair back into the deeper shadows near the study. If they thought my broken spine meant my brain had stopped working, they were making a very expensive mistake. For 8 straight years, I worked 60-hour weeks to build my public relations firm from a borrowed laptop into a multi-million-dollar enterprise. I canceled anniversary trips and spent Thanksgiving mornings drafting crisis statements to secure an exclusive VIP client list. I poured my entire youth into building a fortress of financial security for our family. Then, 114 days ago, a commercial delivery truck crossed a double yellow line and crushed my legs. I assumed the physical rehabilitation would be the hardest battle of my life. I was wrong. The crash only took my mobility. It took my husband's bottomless greed to come after everything else. I pulled my phone from my sweater pocket. The screen cast a faint blue light over my motionless knees. Julian had been aggressively volunteering to handle the administrative side of my agency since I came home from the hospital. He claimed it was to reduce my stress. Sitting in the dark, I opened the master server application. It took 4 taps to revoke his remote authorization to my personal financial directories. It was a small, silent victory. I changed the secondary security layer on my primary email client and locked the screen. My hands were steady. I took a deep breath, adjusted the blanket over my lap, and rolled myself forward into the bright dining room. The transition was seamless. Julian rushed over the moment I appeared near the long oak table. He pulled my chair into place with a practiced, sorrowful smile for the guests. Dorothy patted my shoulder and told the pastor's wife how brave I was being. I swallowed the bile in my throat and let them play their parts. I ate dry turkey and forced a smile for the 2 people who had just cursed my existence. Halfway through the meal, Julian leaned over to Dorothy. He mentioned a courier was scheduled to arrive first thing in the morning. He said he needed to intercept the package before anyone else woke up. He claimed it was just some mundane medical equipment for my physical therapy. Dorothy gave him a sharp, knowing look and told him to make sure the paperwork was handled quietly. She was deeply involved in whatever he was planning. I stared at my water glass. My company's VIP client registry was the single most valuable asset I owned, and Julian had been asking entirely too many questions about its valuation over the past week. Something was arriving in the morning. I just had to wait. At 8:30 the next morning, the doorbell rang. Julian was running the shower upstairs. The water rattled loudly through the pipes. I rolled my wheelchair out of the dark hallway and into the foyer. A delivery driver stood on the porch holding an overnight cardboard envelope. He looked at the printed label and then at me. He handed it through the open door. It slipped from my numb fingers and hit the hardwood floor. Bending forward sent a spike of white heat up my fused spine. I gripped the armrest, gritted my teeth, and forced my torso down inch by inch. The printed label did not say, Natalie Mercer. It was addressed to a company called Apex Solutions. I had never heard that name before, but the tracking number matched the notification I had seen flashing on Julian's tablet the previous night. I tore the cardboard flap open. Inside was a 30-page draft acquisition contract. I read the executive summary first. Julian was brokering a complete buyout of my public relations firm's VIP database. The buyer was our largest market competitor. That client list was not just a spreadsheet. It was 214 distinct corporate accounts. I built that roster from nothing. Operating on 4 hours of sleep a night and personally flying to 70 different cities to shake hands in hotel lobbies. It generated $3.2 million in gross revenue last year. Now my husband was liquidating my life's work for pennies while I was trapped in a chair. I reached for my phone to call the commercial bank and freeze the corporate accounts. The automated system requested my digital authorization token to proceed with a total lockdown. I stared at the blinking prompt. Julian had packed my primary work laptop into the steel lockbox in the home office 2 days after my accident. He claimed I needed absolute rest away from the agency, without that physical token. I was blocked out of my own financial infrastructure. I had to bypass the accounts and secure the data itself. I opened a new encrypted message to Chloe. She had been my executive assistant for 4 years. I typed 3 short lines. I told her to buy a new prepaid phone with cash and establish a secure server portal completely disconnected from my home network. Then I added one more instruction. I told her to locate the silver backup drive from the main office vault and keep it in her purse. I tucked the envelope away. The bedroom door opened with a soft click. Julian walked in carrying a silver tray. A bowl of chicken soup steamed next to a folded linen napkin. He set it gently on my bedside table and sat on the edge of the mattress. "You look exhausted, Nat," he said. His voice was warm, dripping with that practiced concern he had perfected over the last 4 months. "I talked to Dr. Evans this morning. He said screen time is terrible for your neurological recovery. I think we need to disconnect you completely for a few days. Absolute rest." He was acting like a warden. He was trying to tighten the perimeter, cutting off my last remaining lifelines to the outside world. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw the hot soup across his pressed shirt. Instead, I smiled. It was the hardest physical movement I had made all week. I reached over to the nightstand, unplugged my secondary iPad from the charger, and handed it to him. "You're right," I said, keeping my voice soft and defeated. "I should just focus on healing." Julian exhaled, visibly relieved. He leaned down and kissed my forehead. I forced my hands to stay flat on the blanket so they would not curl into fists. "Good. Just rest," he said, tucking the tablet under his arm. "My sister Olivia is coming by this afternoon. She offered to do a deep clean of the house and run some laundry so you won't have to lift a finger." He closed the door. The moment the latch clicked shut, my docile smile vanished. I reached under my thigh and pulled out the prepaid smartphone Chloe had dropped off in the mailbox an hour ago. I did not have my physical security token. I had something older. 8 years ago, I built the agency's first client database on a borrowed laptop in a studio apartment. I had created a master founder's account with root access. The current IT department was terrified to delete it because it anchored the legacy billing software. They just buried it. I navigated to the hidden portal and typed the original credentials. The screen went black. A wall of plain text loaded. Server access logs. I scrolled down to the authentication history from October. There it was. 4 failed login attempts hit the executive server. They all came from our home IP address. I stared at the timestamps. They aligned perfectly with the week my assistant Chloe had called me. Sounding nervous, Chloe had told me Julian was hovering around the IT desk, asking strange questions about administrative passwords and client valuation metrics. I remembered exactly what Julian said when I confronted him about it that night. He had laughed while pouring a glass of wine. He told me Chloe was just being dramatic. He said she was too sensitive. He said Chloe probably felt threatened by him stepping in to help while I was stuck in a wheelchair. I had believed him. I actually told my loyal assistant to let it go. Now, looking at the irrefutable digital footprint on my screen, I understood the tactic. The person who points out the problem is always labeled the crazy one, just so the guilty party can keep working in the dark. I pulled up the active transfer logs. Julian had been siphoning client dossiers for 3 weeks. I tapped the screen to initiate a bulk download of the server history to my encrypted folder. I needed everything documented. A red banner flashed across the top of the display. Remote access denied. The corporate firewall had updated. Bulk downloads of sensitive client data now required physical authentication from an internal IP address on the office network. I was stuck in a bed 4 miles away. If I tried to force the download, the system would lock me out permanently. It would also send a security alert straight to Julian's devices. I could look at the theft, but I could not copy the proof. I stopped pulling files and just read the activity ledger line by line. Something did not make sense. Yesterday afternoon, a massive data packet was routed through a back door. The log showed it was authorized via a physical USB flash drive plugged directly into our home network router downstairs in the living room. I was confined to this bedroom yesterday afternoon. Julian was at a business lunch across town. I had seen the restaurant charge on our shared credit card. If Julian was not here, who plugged a physical flash drive into my router? I switched tabs and opened the photo I had taken of the draft contract from the misdirected envelope. The buyer was Apex Solutions. Their CEO was Arthur Vance. Arthur had mentored me 5 years ago when I first expanded into the tech sector. He was a ruthless businessman, but he respected hard work. Did Arthur Vance know he was buying a stolen database from a husband defrauding his disabled wife? Or had Julian fed him a carefully crafted lie about me stepping down voluntarily? I locked the phone and slid it back under my leg. I needed to know what Julian was telling the board of directors, and I needed to know exactly who was walking freely through my house. The house was perfectly quiet. I sat by the window in the guest bedroom, holding the prepaid phone flat against my thigh. The morning sun glared off the screen. I pulled up the photo I took of the overnight envelope. The return address belonged to Arthur Vance's legal team, but the recipient was listed as JM Holdings LLC. I opened the state's public business registry website on the mobile browser. It was a clunky, outdated portal anyone could access for free. There were no passwords to hack and no firewalls to breach. It was just public records. I typed JM Holdings into the search bar. The system took 5 seconds to load the registration documents. I zoomed in on the PDF. The registered agent was Julian Mercer. The filing date was August 12th. That was exactly 2 weeks after the commercial truck crushed my spine. I scrolled down to the principal office address. It was not a downtown high-rise. It was not an anonymous post office box. It was my address. The exact house I was sitting in. He had filed the shell company listing to our home address. He was so absolutely certain that my wheelchair would keep me confined to the back bedrooms that he used our own front porch as his corporate mail drop. He thought he could broker a $3 million theft right under my roof because I could no longer walk to the mailbox. He was turning the home I paid for into the headquarters of his crime. I took a screenshot of the state record and moved it into the hidden folder. Heavy footsteps sounded on the hardwood stairs, followed by the lighter click of heels. I slid the phone under my medical cushion just as the bedroom door swung open. Julian walked in with a navy suit draped over a wooden hanger. He was whistling a sharp, cheerful tune. Dorothy followed right behind him, carrying a silver polishing cloth and a brass candlestick from the hallway. "I have a massive meeting on Thursday afternoon," Julian said, holding the jacket up against his chest and looking at himself in the vanity mirror. "Once the final paperwork is signed, I thought we should all celebrate." Dorothy smiled and rubbed the candlestick vigorously. "I already ordered the champagne," she said without looking up. "Olivia is taking the afternoon off to join us at the venue. It is going to be a proper family toast. You deserve a win, Julian. After everything you have had to carry." They were planning a victory party. Julian was going to sell my VIP client list, pocket the money through his shell company, and have his mother and sister clinking glasses in celebration on the very day it closed. "That sounds nice," I said. My voice was a flat, even line. "What exactly are you signing on Thursday?" Julian turned away from the mirror. He draped the suit over the back of an armchair. He walked over and adjusted the blanket over my knees with exaggerated care. "Just some tedious administrative restructuring for the agency," he said smoothly. "Nothing you need to worry your head about. I am taking care of everything." He patted my knee. The gesture was patronizing and firm. Then he reached into his leather briefcase resting on the floor and pulled out a thick manila folder. The tab on the side was bright red. "I do need to drop this off with the notary this afternoon, though," he added casually, tapping the red tab. "Just dotting the I's and crossing the T's on your health proxy. The board just needs absolute reassurance that operations won't be interrupted by your condition." He smiled, picked up his suit, and walked out of the room. Dorothy gave me a pitying look, sighed loudly, and followed him out. I sat alone in the quiet bedroom. The state registry had proven he was operating a shell company, and the server logs proved he was stealing data. But Julian was not stupid. He knew selling a company he did not legally own required ironclad authorization. If he was this confident about finalizing the deal on Thursday, he had to have a legal trump card waiting in that red folder. If I blew the whistle now, what legal paper would he use to shut me up? I needed to see exactly what he was doing on our network when he thought no one was watching. I sat alone in the guest bedroom on Wednesday morning. The house was empty. Julian had taken his red folder to the notary. The final signing with Arthur Vance was exactly 24 hours away. I opened the legacy server portal on the prepaid phone and navigated back to the access logs. I needed to understand the physical breach. The server recorded a massive data extraction via a USB drive on Tuesday. The timestamp read 2:14 in the afternoon. Julian was nowhere near the house. He was at a client lunch across town. I knew that because Dorothy had complained about him taking the car. I switched applications and opened the security camera feed for the front porch. I scrolled the video timeline back to Tuesday. At 2:10 in the afternoon, a silver sedan pulled into the driveway. My sister-in-law, Olivia, stepped out. She walked up the brick path carrying a plastic container of homemade chicken soup. She looked directly at the doorbell camera and offered a bright, cheerful wave. She then used her spare key to unlock the front door. I watched the silent footage loop twice. The timestamps were irrefutable. At 2:14, exactly 4 minutes after Olivia walked inside, the master server registered the unauthorized download. Tuesday afternoon replayed in my head. Every detail sickeningly clear and sharp. Olivia had come upstairs to my bedroom first. She fluffed my pillows and kissed my cheek. She insisted I take a nap while she dusted the living room downstairs. The primary network router sat on the bottom shelf of the bookcase in that exact living room. My sister-in-law had not come to clean my house. She had walked in with a bowl of soup in one hand and a flash drive in the other. They had rehearsed it down to a science. Dorothy had sat in the armchair across from my bed that entire afternoon. She talked loudly about her garden club. She deliberately positioned her chair so her body blocked my view of the open doorway. She was acting as the lookout. Every warm smile, every comforting touch, every bowl of hot soup over the last 4 months had been staged cover. They were stripping my life for parts and smiling at me while they did it. I did not cry. I tapped the screen and initiated a direct export of the extraction log. I needed the raw data packet saved to my encrypted folder as definitive proof of the internal breach. A blue progress bar appeared on the screen. It estimated 12 seconds for the transfer. It moved a quarter of the way, stuttered, and froze. Connection timeout. I checked the phone's network settings. The wireless signal was at full strength, but the data transfer rate was completely flatlined. I opened a basic text webpage. It took 30 seconds to load a single paragraph. Julian had logged into the internet provider's administrative dashboard and remotely throttled the home network bandwidth to a fraction of a megabyte. He was choking the connection. He wanted to ensure I could not upload or download any large files, completely isolating me digitally while he finalized the sale of my company. I set the phone face down on the mattress. I did not need the network in this house. I had Chloe, and she had the silver backup drive sitting at the main office on a commercial fiber line. Julian and Dorothy were planning to pop champagne tomorrow. They were walking into the boardroom of Apex Solutions believing they had legally and digitally buried me in this bedroom. I just needed Chloe to confirm the exact floor and time of Arthur Vance's board meeting. The bandwidth throttle on the house network meant nothing. I pulled the prepaid phone from under my medical cushion and texted my assistant Chloe. She had the silver backup drive sitting on a commercial fiber line at my main office. I told her to download the raw extraction logs, print the executive summary, seal it all in a heavy manila envelope, and meet me in the lobby of Apex Solutions at 2:30. Then I booked a wheelchair-accessible van. The Apex Solutions headquarters was an imposing structure of steel and tinted glass in the financial district. Chloe was waiting by the revolving doors exactly on time. She handed me the thick envelope without saying a word. I placed it on my lap. We took the elevator up to the 14th floor. The receptionist recognized Chloe from our previous interagency collaborations and waved us right through to the executive suites. The primary boardroom had a wall of floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city skyline. CEO Arthur Vance sat at the head of a massive mahogany table. His legal team sat in a row along the left side, reviewing thick binders. My husband Julian sat on the right. He was radiating absolute confidence in his tailored navy suit, leaning forward and charming the room. My mother-in-law Dorothy and my sister-in-law Olivia were seated on a plush leather sofa in the back corner. An unopened bottle of champagne rested in a silver bucket on a side table next to them. They were just minutes away from securing a $3 million payday. I pushed the heavy double doors open. The brass handles made a loud click. The low murmur of corporate small talk died instantly. Dorothy froze with her hand hovering over a crystal champagne flute. Olivia sat up straight, her eyes wide. Julian stopped mid-sentence and turned around. He recovered in less than 3 seconds. He forced a tight, pitying smile and stood up from his leather chair. "Arthur, I apologize for the interruption," Julian said. His voice was thick with practiced sorrow. "My wife is still suffering severe neurological trauma from her car accident. She gets confused about her surroundings." He reached into his leather briefcase and pulled out the red manila folder. He slid a single sheet of paper across the mahogany table toward Arthur's lead counsel. "That is a notarized medical proxy," Julian said calmly. "It was signed yesterday afternoon. It grants me full legal and operational control of JM Holdings and all associated assets, effective immediately. Natalie does not have the mental capacity to be here." He turned his head toward the doorway. "Someone call building security to assist my wife." I did not grip the wheels of my chair, nor did I raise my voice. Instead, I wheeled myself forward until my footrest bumped the base of the mahogany table. I picked up the envelope from my lap and slid it perfectly flat across the wood. It stopped directly in front of Arthur Vance. "The proxy Julian just handed you is dated Wednesday," I said. I looked at the lead counsel, then at Arthur. "The VIP client database he is selling you today was extracted from my server on Tuesday at 2:14 in the afternoon. He stole the proprietary data 24 hours before he had the fraudulent legal authority to touch it." Arthur Vance did not look at Julian. He opened the envelope. He pulled out the printed access logs and the silver backup drive. He read the first page in total silence. He flipped to the second page. Arthur had built his empire by destroying weak competitors, but he did not buy stolen goods. The federal liability was too high. "Arthur, this is absurd," Julian said. His voice was a fraction higher now. "She is projecting her paranoia. That is just standard administrative data transfer. We can verify it later." Arthur Vance dropped the pages. He picked up the heavy envelope and threw it down onto the center of the table. The sharp smack echoed against the glass walls. "This is an extraction log showing a physical USB breach routed through a residential IP address," Arthur said. His voice was dead and flat. "You brought me stolen property, Julian." Julian stood up too fast. His knee hit the table leg hard. His champagne glass tipped over, rolled off the edge, and shattered on the hardwood floor. He reached his hand out toward the envelope, palm open, trying to grab it back. His hand stopped in midair. It hung there, trembling slightly, before falling limp to his side. Arthur Vance pressed a button on his desk phone. "Send security to the 14th floor," he said into the speaker. "We have a trespasser. Cancel the acquisition." I turned my wheelchair toward the leather sofa in the corner. Dorothy was perfectly rigid. Her face was entirely gray. Olivia was staring at the shattered glass on the floor, breathing fast. They had spent 4 months watching Julian build a flawless lie, and they just watched a server log tear it apart in 60 seconds. They looked at the broken glass, and then they looked at me. They finally saw exactly who was holding the power. "I believe this meeting is over," I said. I backed my chair up. I turned and rolled out the door. The physical evidence from the silver backup drive went directly to the federal prosecutor's office on Friday morning. By Tuesday afternoon, Julian was formally indicted for wire fraud, identity theft, and corporate espionage. The legal firewall he tried to build around his shell company collapsed the moment state investigators matched his signature on the forged medical proxy to the digital timestamps on the server breach. He lost his career, his industry reputation, and his freedom in a single motion. Dorothy called my phone 6 times that weekend. I did not answer a single ring. Instead, I logged into the commercial bank portal. I canceled the automatic transfer that deposited $3,200 into her account on the 1st of every month. I had funded her comfortable lifestyle for 7 years. She lost it all because she decided to play lookout for a thief. Olivia received a federal subpoena at her front door on Wednesday. Plugging a stolen flash drive into a residential router made her a documented accessory to a federal cybercrime. She was fired from her accounting firm the following Monday when the charges became public. I promoted Chloe to vice president of operations. I took back total control of my public relations agency. I ran the entire multi-million-dollar portfolio from my kitchen table while my spine slowly healed. It has been 8 months since that Thanksgiving dinner. Julian is awaiting trial in a federal holding facility. The house on the hill is entirely mine now. It is perfectly quiet. At night, I roll my wheelchair down the hallway. I check the deadbolt on the front door. I check the security chain. I check the electronic keypad. I wheel myself back into the master bedroom and lock that door too, before I turn off the bedside lamp. I open the security application on my phone. I pull up the camera feed I had installed in the hallway ceiling. I watch the live video of my own closed bedroom door. I watch the empty hallway for 20 minutes before I can close my eyes. A marriage built on opportunism always collapses once the server log tells the truth. I know exactly what you're yelling at your screen right now. You were sitting there yelling. Why didn't she just throw that hot soup in his face? Why on earth would she let him play the devoted, caring husband for even one more day after seeing that Courier envelope? It is incredibly easy to judge from the outside looking in, but when you're trapped in a toxic family, it works like a slot machine in a cheap casino. If the machine just took your quarters and never paid out a single dime, you would walk away immediately. Toxic families operate the exact same way. They do not abuse you 100% of the time. Julian brought her hot soup. Olivia came over to clean the living room. Dorothy offered polite smiles. They give you just enough tiny, fake moments of warmth to keep you pulling the lever, hoping that this time, you will finally win a real, loving family. You get addicted to the potential of their kindness, and that is what keeps you sitting in the chair. But Natalie stopped playing their rigged game. Let's look at the 2 brilliant tactical moves she made to take back her life and her company. First, she executed the silent audit. When that misdirected envelope arrived on her porch, she did not wheel herself into the bathroom and confront Julian while he was in the shower. Confrontation without leverage just gives the manipulator time to hide the evidence and spin a new lie. She stayed perfectly quiet. She secured an untraceable prepaid phone and went straight to the raw server access logs. She gathered her irrefutable data in the dark. Second, she utilized the venue trap. Natalie knew Julian held all the physical power inside that house. He could throttle the internet bandwidth, hide her laptop, and physically block the doors. So, she did not fight him in the bedroom. She took the battle to the 14th floor boardroom at Apex Solutions. She let him build his entire house of cards in front of his billionaire buyer. Then she burned it down with one digital timestamp. She made sure the people who mattered most saw the truth with their own eyes. You cannot negotiate with people who view your physical vulnerability as a business opportunity. You can only outsmart them. If Natalie's story resonated with you today, drop a comment below and let me know where you are tuning in from. Have you ever had to quietly gather proof while someone smiled at you? Share your experience with us, and make sure you hit that subscribe button. There is always another story here waiting for you.